Well, here we are again with another Oppo Reno device. It just feels like the Oppo Reno line comes out more often than pretty much any other line in smartphones. Maybe it's because I have some very fond memories with like the Oppo Reno 10x zoom or the Oppo Reno 2Z in particular. And then I just did the Oppo Reno4 Pro review over at Pocket Now like 4 months ago. And now here we are again with a new version. Now there are some things that we can talk about here that are very worthwhile updates, but here's the thing. It just feels as if for the most part we know what to expect from an Oppo Reno device now, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that the upgrades that you might see on the spec sheet are more incremental than they are revolutionary. So it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? Let's go ahead and talk about it then. This is the Oppo Reno4 Pro in my first impressions after using it for a little bit of time. Now, full disclosure, I have had this device for a little while, but I've only used it on and off because it's been a really busy time for smartphones and honestly for tech in general. So despite all of us being stuck inside, there's a lot to talk about. And as you know, the next couple of weeks are going to be really crazy too. But since the announcement of the Oppo Reno4 Pro is happening pretty much right now, I wanted to be sure I did a video and give you some thoughts on this particular device before I give maybe my top 5 takeaways as my final piece of content. Because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the look and feel of this device, which in a market that is currently trying to really shake things up, this one manages to still be pretty unique. So I'm going to go through the unboxing for a little bit. There aren't too many things that are very different about this experience, other than the fact that the first time I took the phone out, I was surprised by the way the phone actually felt. More on that in a little bit. But another thing that was really nice inside of the box is an included plastic case. Always great to see that, and Oppo tends to do that with their devices anyway. The other thing to keep in mind from the unboxing experience is that the fast charger, the VOOC fast charging, allows for 65-watt charging, which is great because you can get some power back real easily in this device. No matter what segment of the smartphone market any phone might be, fast charging is just always a nice thing to have. So let's go ahead and talk about that backing. This is what Oppo calls the anti-glare matte backing, and it's supposed to be fingerprint resistant, but if I'm honest, there is quite a bit of smudge on the back. It does pick up some smudges from your hands, even if it's not necessarily fingerprints the way it would be on a glossy back. I actually don't use the case on this phone because there's plenty of grip when using this device, and it also helps that the phone is pretty easy to use in one hand because the screen is not too big and the curve on the back allows it to sit real nicely. As far as colorways are concerned, there are a couple of versions of the Oppo Reno4 Pro. This one is the Starry Night that I am using, but there's also a Silky White edition, which still has that anti-glare matte backing, and I imagine it would look really great too. Also, we're going to get to this camera hump in a little bit. It's definitely a departure from other Oppo Renos, and probably something that we expected after seeing what the Oppo Reno3 Pro brought to the table. We're going to get over to the display first, and this has exactly what you would expect from a good smartphone screen experience. It is a full HD AMOLED panel complete with always-on display modes, and it's at 90 Hz refresh rate. Thankfully, the curve is not too egregious, and there's a matching curve for the backing, which I already said is quite grippy, so handling on this phone is top-notch. Speaking of notches though, there is a hole punch at the top, which is where you get your 32 megapixel front-facing camera. It's also used for really fast face unlock, which I tend to use way more often than the in-display fingerprint reader. It just feels that a little bit faster as far as waking up the device and getting straight into the operating system. The screen is nice and vibrant as you would expect from an AMOLED screen, and because of that refresh rate, it still makes this operating system glide about pretty easily. Regardless of how you feel about ColorOS as a version of Android, you can't deny that a high refresh rate screen makes any version of Android seem very nice and smooth. And on the topic of ColorOS, there might be a lot of different applications that Oppo throws onto their version of Android, but overall, it's the kind of experience you would expect, complete with an app drawer and with Google Feed over on the side. Sure, there might be some places where the localization still needs a little bit of extra polish, but it's come a long way from the days when words might not even fit properly in the various elements of the UI. Now, I mentioned it already a little bit, but as far as performance is concerned on the Oppo Reno4 Pro, you're getting the Snapdragon 720G on here. Yes, 720G. That's a number you probably haven't heard a whole lot of. This is still a gaming-forward processor, even if it's on the lower end of the 700 series, hence the G. I've been playing plenty of games of varying graphical intensities, and I haven't noticed many slowdowns at all. In Call of Duty Mobile, you don't get all of the options for really maxing out all of the graphic settings, but it's still an enjoyable experience, and I've been playing other games like Dead Cells on here as well. I have no doubt that the 720G in this phone is going to do just fine for general daily usage, and the rest of the specifications do a good job of matching a more high-end experience. 8GB of RAM and 256GB of onboard storage. And I can't help but applaud a 4000 mAh battery when a device like this is this thin, especially if you can charge it up with that 65-watt Super VOOC charging, which is right next to a headphone jack. That's right, there's a headphone jack on this phone as well. So it does really feel like the Oppo Reno is finding its stride as a great everyday device. It might not have the absolute highest specifications, but whereas the Reno used to be a place where you could innovate a little bit and try out some different things, now it's become a very reliable everyday device for a lot of people. Hence things like the 720G, which allows the phone to not be super expensive. But those tiny little downgrades from what the Reno line used to be might be showing its colors a little bit too much now. Now, this is not necessarily my full review on the camera quality, these are just my reactions to what different features Oppo put into the Reno4 Pro, and again, I want to emphasize, it says Pro, but let's talk about these cameras. Just like we're seeing with even the mid-range game right now, the main sensor is a 48 megapixel high-powered sensor, and then everything else kind of dips in the megapixel counts. It's almost as if they are supporting actors and the 48 megapixel is the star. You get an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and then a 2 megapixel macro, I know, and a 2 megapixel mono camera. The main bummer that I have for the rear cameras is that the 8 megapixel ultra-wide is not capable of 4K video recording. And even then, when you mess around with some of the other settings and features that are available in the camera app, like the ultra steady mode, those are only done in 1080p video as well. Pictures from the phone aren't looking that bad so far, but this is something that we know from Oppo Renos from before. The picture quality can be pretty good, it's just that the feature set is starting to get a little bit convoluted. There are some interesting additions though. One in particular is this AI color portrait, which I used to get a couple of selfies because it's available on the front-facing camera as well. And it's also available in video, which leaves me in color and everything else in the background black and white. Well, sometimes things just sort of come up when you're trying to do a little bit of like everyday work. First thing I'll mention, front-facing camera. It is fairly wide, I do like that. No 4K video recording, unfortunately. But as I was about to walk around the neighborhood, I realized the air quality is probably not that great. I'll probably stay inside for the rest of this video, because look what's happening across the valley. By the way, just so you guys know, that fire that's happening over there, it's near a certain dam that is on the other side of the valley. According to the city that I live in, it's in no danger of actually hitting any parts of the city. So it goes without saying, hope everybody is safe in my area, so hopefully it's okay. Ultimately, this is a camera package that you may have seen before, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that the little corners that Oppo has cut in previous Reno devices still stick around in the Reno4 Pro. It's for that reason that I might not do a real-world camera test dedicated to this phone, but I will do something like that, and it will be part of my final review of this phone, probably my top 5 takeaways of the Reno4 Pro. I will always be excited to see what the Reno brings to the table with each new iteration. It just feels like they're coming out a little bit too quickly, and because of that, things are becoming more and more incremental as time goes on. Yeah, I could reminisce to the days when the word Reno made me think of pop-up cameras or far zooms, but now it seems as if the Reno line is more about providing more accessibility, and I can't knock that either. Maybe at some point I'll be able to get my hands on the Reno4 Pro 5G edition, which itself has the 765G and a couple of enhanced cameras to support the 48 megapixel main sensor. And so there you have it, a quick look at the Oppo Reno4 Pro, the one that I have, which is not the 5G edition. This one has the Snapdragon 720G. Get into the comment sections down below, let me know what you think about the Oppo Reno4 line. There's the 4, the 4 Pro, the 4 Pro 5G. There's a lot going on in the Reno line these days, so I want to know which one you might be into in the comments. At the very least, drop some likes on this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Look forward to eventually a video on this phone about my top 5 takeaways, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to get my hands on one of the other versions of the Oppo Reno 4. But we'll see what happens there. For now, I'm going to call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, I would just remind you to enjoy your tea, everybody.